Hello everyone and welcome back to Cobbeen History. This is the start of a new series about the history of the British Isles, starting at the Stone Age, and we will work our way up to the Modern Age. I'm gonna try something different with this series. I'm gonna try to have a consistent schedule of uploading. So one of these episodes will come out every Saturday. This first season will consist of 6 episodes, which will take us from the beginning of the Stone Age to the end of the Iron Age. So we will now start at the beginning. The Stone Age is divided into the Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic, and in this episode we will focus on the Paleolithic. In the British Isles, the Stone Age started around 900,000 years ago, and Stone Age Britain, more specifically the Paleolithic, saw a lot of periods of occupation followed by abandonment by several species of humans. It was its location at the edge of Europe and its eventual disconnection from the mainland that caused new technological and cultural advancements to reach Britain later than most of Europe. The Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age, starts at the earliest known occupation of the Isles, which was about 900,000 years ago as previously mentioned. And the evidence for this earliest occupation comes from Happisburgh on the Norfolk coast. Stone tools and footprints were found there that were most likely made by the human species Homo antecessor. This species lived before the ancestors of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens split from each other, which happened around 600,000 years ago. The first actual fossil evidence that we found dates to around 500,000 years ago, and was found at Boxgrove in Sussex. It belonged to Homo heidelbergensis, and these early peoples made flint tools, like hand axes, and hunted the large mammals of that time. It is thought that they drove prehistoric species of elephants, rhinoceros, and hippopotamus over the tops of cliffs or into bogs to make them easier to kill. At this time, Britain was permanently connected to continental Europe by a chalk ridge called the Weald Artois Anticline that stretched from the Weald region of southeast England to the Artois region of northeast France. The fold was a result of the formation of the Alps, and the uplift of the anticline used to be around 180 meters, before erosion reduced the height of the chalk ridge to the height that we now see at the White Cliffs of Dover. This ridge blocked the rivers that now feed into the English Channel. So back then, the rivers like the Thames, Rhine and other nearby rivers flowed directly into the North Sea. During the Anglican glaciation, an ice sheet blocked the flow of the rivers to the North Sea, thus trapping the water, which created a large lake to the northeast of the ridge. The extreme cold of this glaciation is also thought to have driven out the humans that inhabited Britain at that time. So with glaciers to the north and a massive lake to the east, the only region that still connected Britain to the continent was a stretch of low-lying land to the southwest of the ridge. That was until the glacial lake burst through the 180-meter high ridge, creating a gigantic waterfall in the later part of that glaciation, which was around 425,000 years ago. This resulted in a mega flood of the low-lying land, which created what we now know as the English Channel, but back then it would have only been a river. Because the water arrived so suddenly, a braided river pattern developed, which would have looked something like this but on a larger scale. We can also see this when we look at a depth map of the English Channel, where we see the blue area is the erosion caused by that river. Over time, this braided river would have come together to make one giant river, combining all of the major rivers that nowadays flow into the English Channel. The rest of the ridge is thought to have broken off around 200,000 years later, which results in the width of the English Channel that we see today. We have no evidence of occupation until the ice receded during a warmer period that lasted from around 424,000 years ago to about 374,000 years ago. Fossils of very early Neanderthals dating back to around 400,000 years ago have been found at Swanscombe in Kent. And this is also where we see a more advanced flint tool industry develop, which permitted more efficient hunting and therefore making the lives of the humans in Britain easier, causing them to remain here until the next period of cooling, starting around 350,000 years ago, drove them out once again. At Pont Newydd in North Wales, Neanderthal fossils were discovered, dated to be about 225,000 years old, and these are the most northwesterly Neanderthal remains ever found. This is about the same time that the rest of the chalk ridge that we talked about earlier broke off. Starting from 180,000 years ago, Britain was once again unoccupied until the Neanderthals returned around 60,000 years ago. By 40,000 years ago, modern humans arrived in Britain, with the oldest fossil dated to be around 41 to 44,000 years old. But by that time, the Neanderthals that inhabited the island had either already gone extinct or went extinct shortly after the arrival of modern humans. But the occupation of modern humans was brief and intermediate as well, due to the quickly changing climate which swung between low but hospitable temperature and severe ice ages. The distribution of the found fossils tells us that the humans at the time preferred the uplands of Wales as well as West and North England, rather than the flatter lands in the east. When we look at the tools they used, we see that they are very similar to those found in Belgium and some parts of northern France. From this we gather that people from these regions likely crossed a huge channel river that combined the rivers that flow into the English Channel today. But another ice age would eventually drive them out once again. They returned during a warmer period in the last ice age, and the first distinct culture, called the Creswellian industry, formed during this slightly warmer period, in an environment that would have been a mostly treeless tundra. This culture is known for its leaf-shaped points, most probably arrowheads, more refined flint tools, and also for its use of other materials such as bones, antlers, shells, amber, animal teeth, and mammoth ivory, that were incorporated into tools but also made into jewelry. In areas where flint was scarce, it seems to have been brought over from other regions where there was a larger supply of it. For example, the stone tools found in the caves of Devon, such as Kent's Cavern, seem to have originated in the Salisbury Plain, which is 161 kilometers to the east. This find could be interpreted in multiple ways. The people of the time were highly mobile and stocked up on supplies when they passed through these regions, or it could also be a suggestion of an early trade network where different groups of people exchanged goods with each other. These people mostly hunted wild horse or the red deer, depending on the season, but other animals such as Arctic hare, reindeer, mammoth, wild cow also known as aurochs, brown bear, lynx, Arctic fox and wolves were also exploited. Between about 12,890 years ago and 11,700 years ago, Britain returned to the glacial conditions when the Ice Age turned to a final cold period, also known as the Younger Dryas. And during this time, people seem to have left and returned periodically. The Younger Dryas was followed by the Holocene, which began around 11,700 years ago and continues to the present. During the early Holocene, the tundras were replaced by a gradually warmer climate, perhaps reaching 17 degrees Celsius in the summer, which encouraged the expansion of birch trees as well as shrubs and grasses. After the Ice Age, there was a limited occupation by hunter-gatherers from the mainland, but they abandoned Britain as well. It was only in the Mesolithic, starting from around 11,000 years ago, that people would finally inhabit the islands permanently. So that's what we will look at in the next episode. Thanks for watching and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But before you go, I just want to give a huge thanks to Bishop King. He's my first and only Patreon supporter at the moment. He was the first to see a clip of this episode a few days ago while I was still working on it. If you want to check out my Patreon, there will be a link in the description below.